right. Way to wake us all up in the morning. Nice to see everyone. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. And I am thrilled to be here to kick off our final, eighth and final session of the Global School Launch event that has been spread over the Global School Launch year. For those who don't know me, I'm Laurie Leshin. I'm the president of WPI, and I couldn't be more proud of the conversations that we've been in together and how the Global School is emerging from a little idea a few years ago to a big presence now, and with tons of possibilities as we head into our next year, when we'll all be back together and working to advance the mission of this great school. So I'm thrilled to be with you and to get us started on this last session. As you know, WPI, the Global School, is really about what WPI is about. We are here to transform lives and to translate knowledge to impact in communities everywhere and advancing the solutions to global problems, and also about revolutionizing the way we think about STEM and STEM education. And the Global School is right at the center of all of that, because we need STEM professionals who think about problem solving differently if we are to really make the impact that we know STEM can make in the world, lifting people up and making lives better everywhere. And we were just talking before you all came in the room about, some of the challenges with COVID around the world. And it's quite clear that science and technology is essential, but it's also not enough, that we need other kinds of skills. We need to blend STEM skills with, human skills, really thinking about how we work in communities with people, people who are being most impacted by these challenges. We need business skills. People need to think about kind of how to translate a piece of knowledge into an action, and all of those things kind of come together in our vision of the Global School. And today we're going to focus in this eighth and final session on the future of work, which is such a critical topic of conversation everywhere I go. I know right now is how quickly and dramatically work is changing and how that impacts workers and learners. And the way I think about this is that the future of education and the future of work are intimately linked. You can't have one without the other. And so as the future of work is changing, the future of education changes too. And the Global School is really a direct response to seeing the need for thinking, again, more expansively, more inclusively about what STEM professionals do and how they do it. And so excited to be in that conversation with all of you today. We get to kick that off with a discussion from one of my favorite WPI alums. I'm sorry, I'm probably not supposed to say that I have favorites. Sorry, Dean. But yes, he is. It's truly one of the pleasures of this job that I get to meet our distinguished alumni all over the world, but and see what so many of them are doing to impact their communities and impact challenges across the planet. And as you sort of rack and stack our alums and the impact they've had, it's hard to imagine someone having a greater one than Dean has had. So I'll come back to Dean in a second and just say that in addition, after Dean's keynote, we will have a panel discussion that Dean Rissmiller is going to moderate with several partners and alums who are talking about different aspects of the importance of tackling this issue of how the future of education and the future of work are intimately connected. So that'll be a great round out this great session. And then I think our provost is going to wrap us up with sort of a where from here kind of conversation. So this is all very exciting as we come to the end of this launch year of the Global School and the last of our sessions of the Global School Kickoff Symposium, which we've spread across the year because of COVID, but I think it's really allowed us to dive deeper than we ever would have been able to dive in areas of our work around the world, and to engage more and more of our partners, our alumni, our friends, as we go forward. So I want to thank Rachel and the whole team who has put these, I know a lot of it's Rachel, has put these sessions together. It's been truly thrilling. So now I'm thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Dean Kamen, again, one of WPI's most distinguished alums and current partner on all things sort of STEM pipeline and future of work, as well as a great employer of WPI alums. I just met another one, Dean, that's coming your way this after graduation, and couldn't be more thrilled by that. So Dean is the founder and president of DECA Research and Development Corporation, which examples of great technologies they've developed include the Home Choice Portable Dialysis Machine, the iBot Mobility System, Segway Human Transporter, a DARPA-funded robotic arm, a new and improved Stirling engine, and the Slingshot water purifier. So you can see just innovation all over the map in terms of application. Dean is also the brains behind one of the advanced manufacturing centers funded by the federal government called ARMI, which is Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute. I think I've got the name right, which is all about regenerative medicine and, basically building organs and tissues, and from a manufacturing perspective, taking them out of the lab and really making them accessible to everyone, with a special focus, frankly, on our military veterans and others who really need better medical solutions to some of the challenges they face. So I don't know if he's going to talk about ARMI, but it's really a fascinating effort that engages people from all around the country in thinking about how do we take the kinds of regenerative medicine work we even do here at WPI, and we're partners with him in that, by the way, out of the lab and into industry, and then be able to really get these solutions applied to make patients' lives better. So that's like the second of three gigantic things that Dean has done in his life. And I'm sure I don't know the full list, but the third, of course, is FIRST. He's the founder of FIRST, which stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology, but we all just know it as FIRST. We know it as a robotics competition, but what you may not know is that it reaches from kindergarten all the way through high school. It reaches millions and millions of kids around the world each and every year. And it has scaled to the point where it is, driving so much of even STEM college admissions. A good 12 to 14% of WPI undergrads are FIRST alums. We know it's driving kids into STEM and really becoming a fabulous outlet for that interest, where they may not be able to express that in the classroom. And so Dean remains, I think it's almost 30 years later, an absolute passionate leader of and advocate of FIRST. And it's in that capacity that I work incredibly closely with him as vice chair of the FIRST board, and I'm thrilled to continue to get to help advance that mission, which is, again, so well aligned with WPI's mission. Dean has received many, many awards for his work, which I will not read you the whole list, but the National Medal of Technology is a pretty good one. But I know the thing that he's most proud of, one of the things, let's say, that he's most proud of is being in the inaugural class of WPI's Hall of Luminaries. And also he has an honorary degree from WPI, which has a funny story behind it, which maybe he'll tell you. And again, we're so proud of our decades-long association with you, Dean, and with the thinking that you do each and every day about advancing the competitiveness of our country in the world, about advancing kids' interest in STEM around the world, and then taking that interest and turning it into innovation. So Dean, welcome, and we're so happy you can be here to keynote with us in our last Global School Kickoff session. So over to you, Dean. We got you.
So Laurie, as usual, you're way too humble. You pointed out that there's ARMI out there. You didn't mention that you're one of its 5 founding board members, and it's doing extraordinary things. I'm glad you finally did say that you're on the board and the vice chair of the board of FIRST, but you didn't point out that when FIRST started 30 years ago, there was really only one university among that first group of teams that competed, and it was WPI. And nor did you point out that WPI has become one of the Titan teams in FIRST, has continued to be the longest running, best supplier of scholarships. You sort of lead the way by example for now, hundreds of organizations that supply tens of millions of dollars of scholarships to FIRST kids. You didn't mention a lot of the extraordinary long-term connections between WPI and DECA and Army and FIRST, and your particular personal involvement in all of them. So I thank you and WPI for all of that. And if you want fun stories, even before the ones about the honorary PhD at WPI, there's one that you may or may not even know, but it's relevant here. I bring it up because it's so relevant to project-based learning and changing education and changing work. But there was in the year I first went to WPI, I was the first year, and I think I might have been the first student, it was very small back then, on something called The Plan. And it was explained to me before I chose to start at WPI that it would be a way by which students could help design their own curriculum within obviously bounds of you've got to come out with enough broad-based skills to succeed and to make WPI proud to give you a degree. But the way I oversimplified what I heard was you get to go to WPI and learn the things that you think you'll need to know to succeed at what your objectives are. And I had been trying to build for my older brother at the time, who was in med school, devices for delivering precise amounts of drugs to babies. And the more I started doing that, literally at the end of my high school years, I realized I needed to understand sensor technology and electronics and process, and those are the early days of digital stuff. In any event, I also love to learn math and learn physics. So when I got to school, I started working with a whole bunch of faculty people on becoming very project-based. Help me do this, help me do that, and help me do that. And in part, I didn't quite, over the first 4 years, do everything you needed to do by the then standards to graduate. But over that couple of years, we started a company to make medical products, which is essentially what grew into DECA. And I think I'm living proof that the plan worked. And I think WPI has continued to, I think, lead all the serious, credible the technical institutions I know of that really does believe in and combine giving kids, students, an actual sense of why you play with different technologies, why you learn different basic physics, why you learn the tools, the powerful tools of mathematics and engineering. And to this day, I am very proud to have been associated as a student, and I am now particularly happy to continue to get a lot of your students here. They're the right blend of having a lot of humility, but also a lot of confidence and a lot of competence when we bring them up. Again, what I think is now becoming apparent to the rest of the world that was apparent to me, at least to me 30 years ago, was that if we don't get enough kids when they're still young, K through 12, to see how exciting tech is, how accessible it is, and that if you put it in the same format as any other sport they play, like FIRST, how much fun it is. If we don't do that, particularly to get more women and more minorities into tech, this country and the world are going to be dramatically underprepared for dealing with ever more complex technical issues. We've seen one last year. With 8 billion people, you get a global issue like COVID-19, and you got to scurry. We now have a world which is literally overheating. That's going to take a massive amount of people to fully understand all the issues of global warming and environmental. And as you pointed out, it's not just technology, it's understanding how to integrate the right technologies with the right policies to make things scalable. And I think, as I said, even 30 years ago, it seemed to me that almost every other human endeavor was working really hard to convince kids do my stuff, do my stuff. The NBA and the NFL and Hollywood had no trouble attracting kids to put a lot of time and a lot of attention to getting really good at bouncing a ball and the law schools. You know, there was LA Law on television, which glamorized all sorts of things. There ought to have been LA Lab. There was no shortage of kids that saw the somewhat immediate capability to succeed, at least financially, in business and in Wall Street. But I think there was this fundamental issue that engineering, science, technology, mathematics not only wasn't being properly presented to kids, but it was almost the opposite. You know, every joke about smart kids, especially if they were girls, then it couldn't be very attractive. And if it was guys, they had to be very nerdy and wimpy. And, you know, we can all use those stereotypes and make technologists and nerds and geeks the butt of a cheap joke. But it had a consequence. And this country was dramatically underproducing scientists and engineers. And we're seeing today the consequence of that. And I think by creating first and by doing other things that we're doing now, we're starting to make kids realize, and not just kids, our government leaders and our business leaders are starting to catch up and realize what we've been saying for a long time, which is, and I think you say that, you always say it better than I do, Laurie, but the fact is, it's not just that these new technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, computer learning, it's not just that they are creating unbelievably powerful tools that allow you to do incredibly exciting, not just jobs, but careers for the kids that have those skills. But what's really also happening is the capability of those technologies is not only, on the one hand, creating great new opportunities, it's eliminating the fundamental, simple jobs. As you know, like you say, this is about the future of work. Well, you know, fortunately, with the Industrial Revolution started, the future of being a ditch digger and making your living with a shovel went away. Nobody complained about that. It's a lot better to be riding a bulldozer doing the work of 100 men than breaking your back. It's more efficient for the world, and it's better for you. And it's better to be designing a bulldozer than using a shovel. And it's better to be building it. But the whole Industrial Revolution gave people better and more interesting jobs. But there were always baseline jobs in industry that people could go do. The baseline work now, fortunately, I think in some ways, dangerous jobs, boring jobs, backbreaking jobs, they're going away. They can be done better and safer and more simply by whether it's machine learning or robotics. So on the one hand, new and exciting careers are coming along, but the future of work is going to be, there won't be too much exciting or highly motivating and profitable work for people that don't embrace, understand, and deal effectively with technology. And I think our education system has to quickly adapt to that. You know, the fact that all the facts in the world are now sitting on everybody's phone says there's no need for education to waste time drilling you and giving you a way to collect, remember, and access facts. It happens now. That's a commodity. Education has to be about giving you an understanding of how to apply technology, how to be creative, how to understand complex problems, deal with complex teams of people to solve these problems. And again, project-based work is, in my mind, the best way to do that, because problem solving is not a spectator sport. It may seem overly simple, but if we treated sports the way we used to treat, I think, education, kids would, you know, and in kindergarten, they'd have to study football or basketball. In first grade, they had quizzes on its history. In second grade, they'd have to write things about. But if you went through 12 years of school studying sports the way we do, math and physics, but never get to play with it and use it, I don't think anybody'd be very good at any sport. The best way to get good at basketball or football is to bounce the ball or kick the ball or do it. And I think that simple recognition, that model, that you learn things by doing it, by failing, by picking yourself up and trying again and getting better, is what's driven just about every decision I've made in my life. Get involved. Life itself is not a spectator sport. I don't know where you want to go with this conversation other than to say I would much rather be in a dialogue than say anymore. But Laurie, I got to add, besides you have too much humility about what you've done at WPI and with First and First Global and Army. I think as WPI starts to spread its philosophy and its impact around the world, I think it's going to have an enormous legacy. And I just hope that First and First Global and everything we do stays closely attached to that and can help support it and help benefit from it.
Thank you so much, Dean. That's great. So I know we have a lot of folks on the call. If they have questions, how do we do this, Rachel? People type in the Q&A if they want to jump in on the discussion.
Yes, the Q&A.
Q&A. So if you are on the call and you have a question for Dean, feel free to type that in. So Dean, I know we're on a bit of a mission right now to work to get First in every school around the country. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit and kind of imagine a world where that is true and talk about how that might change the face of workers and learners in this country.
So there's lots of data now, and I don't mean just the plural of anecdote is not data, especially when you're going to the National Science Foundation or government agencies, but there's data done by various universities, longitudinal data that shows that any school, and it doesn't matter, big city schools, small rural schools, homeschooling, it's very clear that when you do peer equivalent comparisons of kids from any background that have had the opportunity to participate in First and those that haven't, the number of kids that stay involved, that choose to stay in K through 12 to study more math and science, and the ones that choose to go on to technical careers and universities versus the ones that don't, the data is really compelling. So while some people would say that's why you have tens of thousands of First schools, the flip side to me is in a world that's in desperate need of more people with technical competence, with a passion for technology. After 30 years, I look at it and say it's enormously frustrating that we haven't made First available to every kid in every school in this country, even if, as they should, many will decide I want to go into art or many other fields. At least they should be aware. And in that regard, changing social systems, particularly, let's say, education, is very slow. It's a high inertia process. And so in the midst of COVID, as all sorts of new sources of funding and new ways of thinking about doing education have emerged, we have enough support from our friends, and we do have a lot of friends now in Washington that believe in First, that we've gone to them and said, among the enormous amounts of new money in various government programs, whether it's there's just too many different versions, whether you call it infrastructure or whether you call it the endless frontiers in science and tech, whether you look at some of the new agencies they're trying to put together or the new resources they're putting into existing agencies like the National Science Foundation, it turns out that there's a lot of new baseline money coming in that wasn't predisposed to, frankly, looking backward or old institutional structures. And so we've tried to put together a good message and a lot of messengers, credible people from industry and hopefully yourself from universities that are about to say, for a few tens of thousands of dollars, that's per school, not per student. The average cost of K through 12 education to the local community is something in the order of $10,000 per year per student. And we're saying for not much more than that, an entire school can have a First team. When you look at the cost of getting involved, when you want to make sure that the teacher that is devoting this after school time to be the coach, the same way that the same teacher could devote after school time during the football season or baseball season or basketball season to be a coach of one of those teams. We said, give the teacher in any school the same stipend, the same recognition you gave the teacher that's coaching any other extra activity. Give the school the opportunity to get that fantastic first kit of really cool stuff that we make every year, and give them some of the other resources to make the team work. And we all know it costs way less for a school to have a first team than a whole football field and a football team, or a baseball field and a baseball team, or a beautiful parquet floor and a beautiful gym and basketball teams. And as we've been saying for years, unlike those other sports, we're just as exciting, but we have a couple of big advantages. One is we're the only sport where every kid on every team can turn pro. There are millions of great career opportunities for kids that embrace tech these days. There's desperate shortages across every industry. There aren't that many openings in the world of professional sports or entertainment. The other, I think, really big difference between our sport in a public school funded by public dollars and all these other sports is we're the only sport that's open to all kids. If you're not going to be 6 or 7 feet tall, you're probably not going to make it in basketball. If you're not going to be a couple of 100 pounds, you're probably not going to make it in football. Girls don't get to participate in many sports, guys do, and vice versa. But first is a sport that every kid can participate in on an equal basis and have a great time. So we've gone to Washington and we've gone to the governors and we've said, now that there's suddenly disruption happening, let's make sure that one of the lasting legacies as we come out of this COVID thing with some new ideas, particularly in education, let's make sure we have embraced a new 21st century sport. It's the sport of the mind. It's the only sport in which humans can compete in the unlimited class. Let's make it available to all kids everywhere. And with a lot of help, including from you, Laurie, we think we're going to pull that off.
That's awesome. So people have started jumping in the Q&A, but the first one is sort of builds on what we were just talking about, which Nancy Burnham is a physics professor at WPI says, first in every school in the country, why not the world? Maybe you could talk a little bit about First Global. We're with you, Nancy.
So thank you for that question. And again, as usual, Laurie, your humbleness is not helping me. The fact is, what Laurie could answer that question with is, hey, a couple of years ago, besides Laurie joining the board of First, I can tell you that when I went out and said, we've got to form a whole sister organization to First, which we now call First Global, we got a lot of support and a lot of introductions from Laurie, and we are shamelessly going to exploit the connections that WPI has with universities, institutions, and alums and individuals around the world. But to give you a sense of how fast we believe we're going to have First Global be available to kids all over the world. And by the way, there are many countries in the world where the access to technology is really hard. So the marginal extra impact in those places to getting kids, particularly women, into tech is extraordinary. But 4 years ago, we said, let's demonstrate that we can bring the world together around a sport other than the Olympics. And we made the sister organization to First, namely First Global, much more the model of the Olympics. Namely, every country, like in the Olympics, unlike First, where we have some countries, Israel has 1,200 first teams, Canada has 1,000 first teams, Mexico, and many, many countries have a few, but they have regionals, India, China. But we said, no, let's create a way to spread the word of First the same way that the Olympics works, which is we don't care whether you're the United States or an island, a Micronesia. Every country in the world should send a single team. They should prepare a team. The country should get, through their own patriotism and excited about being involved in First, and it should therefore spread to many, many teams per country. But we said, let's build First Global. Well, on very short notice, we sent notices to lots of folks. I thought we'd get 20 or 30 or 40 countries each to send one team to our demonstration program, which we did in Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C., and we didn't get 20 or 30. We got 136 countries, each sending a team. We packed that place for a 3-day celebration. It was unbelievable. It was so successful that we agreed right there on the spot. I'm not ever been accused of great planning, but we seized the opportunity in 2017 and said, next year we're going to do this internationally. And the following year, in one of the largest stadiums in the country of Mexico, built and to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the '68 Mexico City Olympics, we did the first global event outside the U.S. We did it in Mexico City, and we had something in excess of 160 countries each send their team. And with a little help from you guys, every country in Africa, every single one of the 54 countries in Africa had a team there. That went so well, we seized the opportunity to say, we'll prove that kids, way more than their parents and grandparents at a young age, can learn how to communicate and cooperate and stop the never-ending repetitive self-inflicted wounds that humans seem to do. And we said, let's go to a place that really can demonstrate kids know how to communicate and cooperate. Let's go to the Middle East. That's a pretty tough neighborhood. And so we convinced the leadership of the United Arab Emirates that we would do last year's event. Well, we didn't do one last year because of COVID, but the 2019 event following Mexico, we did that in Dubai. And we didn't get 160 some odd countries. We got 191 countries. Virtually every country in the world had a team. Every country in Africa, once again, and every country in the Middle East, countries where the parents and grandparents of the kids wouldn't talk to each other. Every one of those countries had a team. It was a celebration. It was a fantastic event. And then, of course, COVID hit last year. But as we speak, Laurie, I think you know, but all your faculty members, all your students, all your alums, and now all the connections you're making globally ought to be aware that we are working really hard to do a 2022 event that will have every country in the world. We are really excited about the connections that have been made and are getting stronger and stronger and stronger among the first global community all over the world, and it's including government people, education people, industry people all over the world. And it's in a world where there's no shortage of disappointing news and looking at behaviors that we all ought to be disappointed or worse, ashamed of. When you see what happens at First and when you see what happens at First Global, it just gives you confidence that given the right opportunities and the right leadership, people will rise to the occasion and do the right thing.
Yeah, it's the stories coming out of the UAE First Global were incredibly inspiring. If we have time later, I may make you tell the final story there, but we have lots of questions now. So I'm going to be jumping into the Q&A and jumping around there a little bit. So if you don't hear your question right away, I'll probably come back to it and I may lump and combine some questions. So we have a question about how we get kids more exposed to different types of STEM and tech disciplines. Victoria is specifically asking about fire protection, which we have a great capability in here at WPI, which is, again, something that is so fascinating. And like 2% of GDP is spent on keeping us safe from fire. Like it's a really incredible field. But most kids don't really think about that that's something they could go into. How do we help increase awareness of the different types of STEM disciplines?
Well, I think what you just said is a perfect example. Namely, who would think that issue is that much of an economic, I'll call it either issue or opportunity, because if it's 2% of a very big number, it's a very big number itself. And if you can bring newer and better technologies to solve any old problem, you have at least 2 big wins. If you solve the old problem, that's a big win. You solved a problem. And if you do it with better technologies that are also cost effective and scalable, typically there's a nice reward in it. The system works. But you mentioned fire prevention and technology. I don't, again, know if you even know this, Laurie, but every year for at least 10 years, we've gotten folks like the X Prize board to agree to help support, particularly First Lego League, by supporting a competition. And we give them the opportunity to pick some field or some problem that they'd like to solve, and then submit an invention. These are kids. In many cases, they're 7, 8 years old. Kids submit their version of a solution to a really big problem. And the winners, year after year, it's part of the deal we made, will be presented with a $20,000 check by the United States Patent Office. And the Commissioner of Patents each year has invited us to Washington for a big ceremony down there where they learn about how to protect intellectual property, et cetera. And each year we see them, the judges select kids that have done just some remarkable inventing for little kids. And one year, what the kids decided to do, kids from California that saw the cost of these massive fires that get really big before anybody can detect them. And the kids invented, and they have their provisional patents. And I think they were either elementary school, but I don't even think they were middle school. And their invention was to take their Lego robot and create a way to have it just basically climb a tree. And as you know, they have the ability to communicate via cell. And these things would be up there, and they put detectors on there that would look for smoke, or if they had different sensors we gave them. And their vision was, if all the kids took all these robots and deployed them, and they would essentially go creeping along these remote environments, they would report back really quickly when a potential fire existed. And presumably by detecting it very, very early, you would prevent it from ever spreading. And the idea that these were kids that came up with the idea, then implemented the idea, and got the recognition by getting this award in the United States Patent Office was a great example of the fact that if you take technology and say to kids, it is not abstract. Mathematics it's not only beautiful, it's also very powerful. And if you can show kids how you link science and technology and the rules of engineering to very realistic problems, and then you give them some physical stuff like the first Lego League kids or like the first robotics kids, and say, you use these very real things in this very real world to solve a very real problem with some of these abstract ideas, again, of math and physics, you get totally passionate, excited kids. And once they do it, by the way, they never go back. We hope they all end up, or a good number of them end up at WPI with bigger kits of more stuff and deeper and more powerful understanding of the math and the physics and the engineering. And there's no shortage. There's absolutely no shortage of problems to be solved. And we've got to prepare these kids to do it.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, the Commissioner of Patents in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is a WPI parent. So his daughter graduated from WPI, or is about to graduate. I can't quite remember where she is in her process, but he's been a great partner to us. So that really completes the circle there. There's always a WPI connection. Yeah, I agree. And the idea of partnering in disciplines with, things that we know really get into kids' heads, like first, even from really young ages, I think is a really smart answer to that question. Similarly, as you think about the support for STEM education, you have a ton of connections through FIRST and your other projects as well with the private sector. There's a sense that there's a bit of a disconnect between what the private sector is saying they need from education and what education is giving them. And how do we think about partnering better between education, especially STEM education, and also the private sector?
Well, again, I think it might seem I'm always taking the cheap way out by using the analogy to sports. But the reason that we have such a powerful system in sports in this country is think about this. When kids in elementary school, every little kid wants to do what their older brothers and sisters do. You don't have to be a psychologist to understand that. And if you just look at this country and you'd say, boy, we'd have a crisis in industry, in the sports industry, if we really wanted kids to be great at cricket in this country. You could put it in the curriculum. We could have a cricket curriculum for 6, 7, 8-year-old kids. They're not going to become great at that sport. You want kids to be great at the sport like football, you have an NFL out there, superstars and role models. You want kids to be great at baseball, you have a World Series. You want kids to be great at basketball, you have the final. We have a culture in which, you get the best of what you celebrate. And when we have superstars and when our culture is built around, the fact that there is an NFL is why you have such powerful football in colleges. And because of that, you drive high school kids to want to excel at this stuff. But those colleges, they have scouts out there. They're looking right at all these high schools trying to figure out how to get the best students into their colleges. And then the professional teams are picking these kids sometimes even before they graduate from college. But that's a very strong sense of what do we need, how are we going to get it, and it's all aligned. So I know Laurie, that you go to a FIRST event, you go to the championship of FIRST now, and down Scholarship Row, there's a couple of 100 sets of those scouts, because every university, of course, including you guys from day one, are at our events scouting. They're looking for the best of the best to get there. Well, in the very, very same way, we have 3,700 corporate sponsors at FIRST, and they don't do this for philanthropy. They do this as an investment in their own future. They need them for their own employees, and they got to scout them younger and younger and younger, because all these big tech companies that are desperately looking for more talent, and it's in short supply now, have also realized something else. If a kid leaves some town and goes off to get a degree at WPI or other great technical institution, that kid leaves that institution with essentially a free pass. Do I want to go to Silicon Valley? Do I want to go to San Diego? Where in this country do I want to go? Because if I've got technical expertise, there's a shortage. It's a seller's market. I can go anywhere. And so these companies, every company that's looking for these kids has recognized, if I want those kids when they get out of college to come to me, I better start investing in them when they're in high school. I better stay involved with them in college. So besides scouting, besides creating a bigger pipeline, those big companies that desperately need these kids and those little startups that need these kids are saying, I want to help shepherd you through the process. I want to stay involved with you. You're going to learn from me what skill sets I need. And they're not just technical, it's leadership, it's teamwork. But I think what we've done, again, is do nothing more, nothing less than the sports model that have created a clear path and a pipeline. And so when you look at how industry views FIRST, I think a small piece of what they think they're delivering to FIRST is financial resources. I think the big thing that industry is doing when it links itself to FIRST, we have 200,000 volunteer mentors that work with the kids on the teams. And these mentors are telling them what their companies do and what their companies need. They're exciting these kids about the career opportunities. But really what we're getting from industry is hundreds of thousands of mentors that make the tech relevant to these kids. And what we're also getting from them is their vision for what's important for these kids to do. And it isn't rote learning. It isn't, do the problems in the back of the book. It's help me solve critical problems in innovative ways. And to do it, you better learn. You better get those skills. You better have the language of mathematics and physics to make sure that what you're doing is plausible and doesn't violate the second law. But I think when you ask the question, how should particularly technology and engineering education change, it should change in a way that at a very early phase of their thinking, kids see a real path. They see what industry needs. They see what problems really need to be solved, and they see how they can connect what otherwise seemed like rote or abstract tools like learning trigonometry to tying it to the ability to have great tools to solve big problems. And I think industry and its role models, and it's not, I shouldn't say just industry, as you know, Laurie, the two largest sponsors of our 3,700 sponsors, a few dozen are giant tech companies that might have 50 or more. A few of them have broken 100 teams for a single company. The big guys have done that. But there's two organizations that are by far our biggest single supplier of mentors. And you worked at one of them. There are two huge long-term sponsors of FIRST that get bigger every year. The second largest sponsor of FIRST in terms of teams and support and mentors is NASA, with well over 250 teams. And they're distributed all over the country because they need these kids. And the largest single sponsor of FIRST teams in the entire country, and this surprises most people, is the United States Department of Defense. Yes, it's Annapolis and West Point and Colorado Springs. Yes, it's their academic sides that are competing for these kids, just like WPI is. But they recognize that if they're going to have an ever smaller piece of the American population as part of our military and our armed forces in an ever more complex, technically sophisticated world, if that's going to be the case, they more than ever need to compete for the best and the brightest. And last year, the Department of Defense by itself was sponsoring over 1,000 teams, which makes them overwhelmingly the largest single sponsor we have. So I think there's compelling proof all over the place that FIRST really does act mostly as the link between industry, government, universities, high schools, kids, parents, mentors. We make it all real, and I think we are a driving force and a great example of how education has to change to include all the appropriate stakeholders and be relevant mostly to the kids that have to devote a lot of their time to learning. They need to be encouraged that it's not just, quote, an academic exercise. If you can show these kids why it's so important, what they're learning, they'll really get passionate about it. And FIRST is proving that we can do that.
Awesome. Hey, so there's a couple of questions here that are more sort of futurist, future of work oriented, a little less FIRST oriented that I'm just going to run by you here. So how do you think about the post-COVID workplace in terms of remote versus in-person work? Somebody asked, what do you think, how it's going to break down sort of percent remote, percent in person in the post-COVID world? I know you must be thinking about this at DECA and elsewhere.
So it's really funny that it's like the mask thing no longer seems to be about COVID and virus. It seems to be a political statement. I don't know why. In the same way, what's the world going to look like? What's going to work look like after COVID comes into two classes. Some people think we're going to get back to where we were, and some people are saying it's permanently changed. And I find it funny because they're both wrong, and I don't know why they have to try to make these general statements. There are things that have been accelerated by the fact that you couldn't get together, so you had to find the alternative, which you probably thought was the best I could do, but it turned out not only to be acceptable, but demonstrated to be better. I mean, most people didn't like to have to drive to the doctor, sit in endless waiting lines in their office, not knowing what else they're being exposed to, for what in most cases didn't require an actual human interaction. I think now that they've figured out how to do so much of that stuff remotely, which is more efficient for all sides, by the way, the doc can see more people, can give more advice. There are certain things, I'll pick that one as an example, that they're not going to go back because it had no reason to go back. You've solved the fundamental problem. You just accelerated adopting a solution. Mm-hmm. There are other things that people really, really miss. You trust me, sporting events we're going to go back to with a vengeance because people want to get together, and you can't play a sport remotely. And going to the restaurant or going to theater. I think what we're going to see is people will focus on certain things that we never really found very efficient, and we've now proven we don't need to do them in real time by sitting in traffic or by sitting in a waiting room or by doing There are things that are very specifically going to go away, and there are things that will come back with a stronger vengeance that people will appreciate even more. And I think anybody that thinks it's going to go back to the way it was, they're silly, or those people that seem to worry that we're all going to live cloistered in little secret places are silly. Humans are very anthropogenic. Humans want to gather. I mean, the ancient cities grew up long before there were, population problems, and the ancient Greek cities were crowded. You could walk from the Theater of Dionysus to the Parthenon in ancient Greece. People want to get together and share ideas, and whether it's art or science or philosophy, people want to share and they want to get together, and certainly in things like sports. So, and in the world of industry, forget sitting at the doctor's office, I'll say here at Tech, I have 800 technical people. A lot of the software people have determined they can work most of the time at home and get together when they need to, virtually, or around the water cooler. I have 250 ton injection molding machines and thousands of pounds of 5 and 6 axis CNC machines. Well, tool makers and machinists need to be near those, and people that are running test equipment and doing tests on the products we make, whether it's iBots or drug delivery systems, will want to be and need to be together. But I think the idea that we're either going to go back to what we once were, or we're going to permanently isolate ourselves, are silly. We're going to adopt the best and most efficient ways to eliminate waste of time and resources. And we've had a big push to do that more quickly in some ways, and we're seeing the result of it. And in other ways, I think we're going to come back stronger than ever to appreciate how important human interactions can be. And we will appreciate even more getting together for the, quote, social events that people are really struggling to get back to. And all you have to do is look at how frustrated and, frankly, how almost clinically depressed so many people are because of what's happened. So it will be a very different world, but it's not going back to what it was, and it's not going to keep us separated. It will be, I think, the integration of appropriate solutions. And I think for a university, the really practical fact is, I think project-based stuff will emerge as being really, really valuable, because just like if you don't really need to see the doctor, why do you go there? Do it virtually. But you got to see the dentist because they're doing something physical to you. I think universities are going to start to realize anybody can sit at home and do the problems in the back of a book and electronically take quizzes and tests. So I think the universities are going to have to really demonstrate that getting together, sharing ideas, sharing resources, solving problems together in a physical world is what's really important. And any university that thinks they can keep charging people a lot of money to essentially keep them lined up in rows in a classroom where there wasn't a lot of project stuff going on are going to find that they've lost their value.
Well, I think that is probably a good place to wrap it up, although there are a few other questions here in the chat. But I want to thank everybody for being a part of this, and especially Dean, thank you for being with us. And we did see, Nancy, I do see your post here about the three IQP teams developing a robotics program with a nonprofit in an informal settlement outside of Windhoek, Namibia, the capital of Namibia, which so they're going to be presenting, looks like next week. So I'll share that info. Nancy, send that to me in an email. Okay. We'll share that with Dean in case he wants to zoom in and surprise the teams. But, I think you've just made the case for us of the importance of the global school and the kind of hands-on community-based impact that we are trying to have, and we're trying to prepare STEM professionals for, and we know those skills will always be needed. So Dean Kamen, we're so proud of all you've accomplished and that you've done so in partnership with us at WPI. We look forward to more years of that collaboration, and we thank you for being a part of our global school launch.
And I thank you, and I never forget, probably one of the smartest decisions I ever made when I was young was going to WPI. And I will continue in any way I can to strengthen our ongoing relationship across all our projects, Army, First Global, you name it. And send me some more kids. I'm desperate.
We got it. We got it. All right. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break and then be back with our panel. So again, thank you, Dean, and thanks everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Good morning. My name is Kent Rissmiller, and I'm the interim dean of the Global School at WPI. Thank you all for being here and joining us this morning as we address this really important topic of the role of new technologies in the future of work. We have a distinguished group of panelists, including WPI alums and friends and faculty. And I'm privileged to be able to introduce them. Looking at their background materials, if I shared all their accomplishments there, we wouldn't have time to hear from these people. So I want to take some time to briefly introduce them, and then we'll go in order as they are shown on the slide here. The panelists will each speak for about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up to questions from the people in the audience and have a discussion. We have about 75 minutes for this morning. You should feel welcome to put questions in the Q&A section at any time, and we'll get to them after this panelists have had an opportunity to present. Our first speaker is Wes Wheeler. He's the president of Global Healthcare Division of UPS. Global Healthcare stores and transports pharmaceuticals and medical devices all over the world. Prior to taking this role, Wes was the chief executive officer at Marken, a leading global supply chain service provider, serving the pharmaceutical sector and laboratories worldwide. Wes completed a degree in mechanical engineering at WPI, later completed an MBA. He initially worked for ExxonMobil for 12 years before joining GlaxoSmithKline, rose to become a senior vice president there. Wes served as the CEO of several other pharmaceutical companies, and in over 40 years has been involved in every key functional area in pharmaceuticals, including manufacturing, drug development, supply chain logistics, marketing, and engineering. Our second speaker is Joe Quinlivan. Joe is the tech vice president of robotics and fulfillment at Amazon Robotics, where he's responsible for driving Amazon's robots to make the company faster, smarter, and better at providing consistent customer experience and a safer workplace for its employees. Prior to his role at Amazon, Joe held numerous other executive positions, including director of software for Nexion and vice president for R&D at Lucent. Joe also holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, this one from the University of Massachusetts, but he has 2 master's degrees from WPI, one in science management and the other in computer science. Joe's engaged in a variety of organizations on the campus, including the Tech Advisors Network and the Robotics Advisory Board. Our third speaker is Dr. Greg Fisher, faculty member in robotics engineering and mechanical engineering and biomedical engineering at WPI. Greg is the founding director of the Automation and Interventional Machine Medicine and Robotics Research Laboratory, and also directs Practice Point Research Center for research in healthcare and cyber physical systems. Professor Fisher's research interests include medical robotics, MRI compatible mechatronics, computer-assisted surgery, wearable devices, and robotic education. Greg completed his PhD in mechanical engineering at Johns Hopkins University. Fourth speaker is Dan Weigel. Dan is the Associate Director for Corporate Partnerships at WPI. In this role, Dan assists in developing and delivering graduate programs and professional development workshops for the needs of adult learners as well as corporate clients. Prior to joining WPI, Dan worked at the College of the Holy Cross, where he held multiple positions with their admissions office. Dan completed his bachelor's degree at Holy Cross, but an MBA at WPI. Patricia Sumala is our fifth speaker. She is the Director of Career and Technical Education at Worcester Technical High School. A native of Worcester, Patricia completed her bachelor's degree in biology with a concentration in pre-veterinary science at Worcester State University. She began her career as a veterinary technician at the Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine at Tufts University and worked in the Harrington Oncology Service there. After completing a master's degree in education, Patricia joined the American Animal Hospital Association, the accrediting body for veterinary hospitals. In 2013, she joined Worcester Technical High School, first as a teacher of animal science. In that role, she built veterinary programs that serve over 120 students yearly and an on-site veterinary clinic that serves over 400 animals a month. After completing her doctorate in 2016, Patricia was promoted to the Director of Career and Technical Education at the Worcester Technical High School, and in this role oversees 22 vocational programs and works to enable her students' pathways into careers. Lastly, Martine Burt is a Paraguayan social entrepreneur, an author and educator. He is also the mayor of Asuncion, Paraguay, and was a chief of staff to Paraguay's president. Martine is the founder of Fundación Paraguayan, a leading nonprofit and microfinance organization in Paraguay. He developed the Poverty Spotlight, a poverty measurement tool and coaching methodology. His most recent book, Who Owns Poverty, was published in 2019. Martine has received numerous awards for his social entrepreneurship work and has been recognized with distinguished alumni awards from both George Washington University and the University of the Pacific. Martine currently serves as WPI's visiting professor of social entrepreneurship, and in that capacity, he works with our students and faculty to help them leverage their engineering skills to solve social and environmental problems. I want to thank all the panelists for joining us this morning, and I'm going to turn it over now to Wes Wheeler.
Okay, wanted to see if you can hear me okay?
I hear you,
Check.
and I see you.
Great. Thanks very much, and good to be with you all. Of course, I just celebrated my 43rd year since I took the competency exam at Worcester Tech. And certainly in all those years since I worked for Exxon and then GlaxoSmithKline, watched technology take a significant role, not only in the manufacture of oil products, but then of course drug products over all these years. Especially data analytics has been really the key over these years that I've been in healthcare. But suddenly I find myself running a 6,000 person division in UPS with 550,000 employees, probably 85% of which are in the manual labor, 5,000 pilots, and 220 countries. And I think we operate now 83 different healthcare facilities around the world in 35 countries. So I'm part of a pretty big infrastructure now. I didn't think I'd be quite into this role at the moment, but a year ago, just about a year and a half ago, actually, they asked me to take this role as president of UPS Healthcare, first vertical business unit, company's history since 1907. And of course, 2 months later, we're in the middle of this pandemic. And I think I'll talk a little bit about what we've experienced here in the last, say, 12 or 15 months. We got involved right away with the federal government moving PPE from China. We had to have our pilots tested every single day coming in and out of Beijing to get the PPE. We moved 27 million pounds of PPE into the US during that time. We got involved with states and cities doing test kit laboratory work. I think we've moved now 250 of the Abbott test kits alone around the country. And of course, early on, we got involved in the clinical trials for the Pfizer vaccine. And at that time, we didn't really know much about the vaccine, but I got a very, very early key when they put the protocol out there for the public to see, which is the first time ever in our history in healthcare, in the pharmaceutical industry, where you could actually see the medical protocol before you even start the work. And so many companies got involved in investigating a way to develop a vaccine. We got involved right away with Operation Warp Speed. We called the Health and Human Services Group. We got involved we made an infrastructure decision to build freezer farms all over in two locations. We built the dry ice manufacturing plant. We built cold chain facilities all over the world. We mapped hundreds of lanes from possible sources of vaccines to where they might be delivered in the future. I'm now a key part of the Operation Warp Speed team. They call themselves something different now. But as a result of all this preparation work, including 2 command centers in 2 different locations in the world, one in the US and one in the Netherlands, we're able now to track and trace with good technology pretty much every shipment of vaccines or any shipment of any significant treatment or therapeutic that's available today. We have now delivered 250 million doses of the Pfizer and the Moderna and the Janssen vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine to 92 countries. On Friday, we delivered the first 1 million doses to Brazil for the first time in that country to get their vaccine. And just yesterday, we delivered 22 tons of oxygen concentrators into India to help with that country's crisis at the moment. So we're very, very involved in this. It's been an amazing journey. I had a couple of slides just to flash through the next slide, just to show some pictures. One thing I learned, of course, we've all been working remotely all this time, but that's for the lucky ones that can work remotely from a Zoom or from a command center or from a remote location. But if you go to the next slide, what I always remember during this time is that still there are people that have to handle things. And it's not necessarily your option, their option to not come to work. So the 5,000 pilots, the operators in all of our locations. This happens to be our Louisville, Kentucky hub, our dry ice center, where we're actually loading dry ice into packages, people handling packages all over the world. It still takes manual effort. On the bottom left, you'll see General Perna, become a good friend of mine, visiting our freezer farm in Louisville last year. And the final slide is just to talk a little bit about how technology might change healthcare in the future. What we found during the clinical trial stage is that nobody wanted to go to the clinic. So people didn't want to go to a clinic. They didn't want to get infected, and the clinics didn't want them because they might infect their patients. So as a result, we actually conducted almost all the vaccine clinical trials from the home setting. We had global nurses in 90 countries. We have a direct-to-patient shipment system where we can actually bring data back and forth and blood back and forth from the home without having to touch the hospital or the clinic. I think that's the future of healthcare. I think you'll see in the future, as the previous speaker said, as Dean said, you'll be doing your regular routine doctor visits from home. He'll be streaming vitals to you. He'll be looking at you on the screen. He'll be giving you a diagnosis, and a home nurse will come to your home to deliver or administer any drug you might need. I think that is a technology shift in our healthcare system going forward. It's going to be really exciting. I'm getting to the end of my career now, but I'm really hoping that I can be part of what we call now is these virtual trials and the home-based nursing systems, the home-based technology that we have now for healthcare. So with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Kent,
Good morning, Joe.
you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Appreciate the opportunity to speak at the forum. Always excited to participate in WPI panels and support the mission that WPI drives towards. As you know, we've had just a great relationship and have gotten so many great students who have really driven the growth of robotics at Amazon. As I think back, I ended up at Amazon through an acquisition. I was doing a robotics startup called Kiva, and I was there about 4 years before the Amazon acquisition. And as we were thinking about growing the company, we hadn't had an internship program, and our first internship program was 12 WPI students, who I think 9 of them ended up joining the team. So we're all excited. We're super excited to start that relationship, grow that relationship over the years. It's really been really jet fuel for our engine, and we're super thankful for the students and the relationships that we've grown up with WPI over the years. You know, as I think about the future of work, the thing that has struck me over my career, and I would say over the last 8 years, has been a significant shift, has been just the velocity of innovation, the velocity of technology. And things that used to take years to develop are now taking months to develop. Products that used to take years to get to market are now taking sub-years to get to market, and really even complex system design. So that has been fueled the growth. I think you've seen the technology growth, and especially in the robotics space, as you see the growth of robotics across the country. And I do think it's an area of innovation, an area that the states have. The United States has still leadership in, and that's great to see. And WPI's program has been a big part of that. I think one of the things that we see and that I see personally is that challenge getting enough access to the talent that is available to continue to grow these organizations. I know at Amazon Robotics, it's a big part of our job is making sure the pipeline is filled with great talent, and make sure once we have them, we develop that talent and we're growing them in a really healthy way. And part of that talent is we look at people who are looking to be part of our team. We're looking for great collaborators, people who have had demonstrated great teamwork and really have a missionary and evangelist type of attitude and believe in our mission. And so WPI's project-based curriculum is super supportive of that mission, and we see the students we get out of WPI have that collaboration, have done a lot of project-based work, and they're really day one ready to come contribute. And that's another shift I've seen over the years is the preparedness of the students we get has been significantly better than I think maybe 10 years ago. Day one, these students are prepared with the latest skill sets to come in and contribute. And that kind of leads me to kind of one of my last thoughts is this concept of continuous learning. And with the focus on innovation and the velocity of technology, this mindset of continuous learning has to continue. Is this virtual flywheel? And we think about just in the last years, I think about the shift in robotics in terms of what cloud computing has allowed us to do, both in storage and compute. The advances in kind of machine learning and sensor and commodity sensing is really driving technology and new products at a much higher velocity than we've ever seen. So I think the mental model for people who are in this space is that when you come to us, your journey is just starting, but the learning is just starting too. And throughout your whole career, you have to have this this drive and this appetite to continually learn and improve yourself. I know specifically for Amazon Robotics, we always start with the customer and we work backwards. And we have this customer obsessed culture. And I think of the pillars that drive that customer obsession internally are the sense of collaboration. Can we get teammates who are great collaborators? And I think WPI has delivered a lot of great collaborators to us, because I think your project-based program certainly stresses that and develops that. And that collaboration, coupled with an innovation mindset, delivers great products. And as you can see in the collage here, here's what our culture looks like. And you can see it's for all the technology we drive, it's really people and people's ability to collaborate and innovate together and build on each other's ideas is really the lifeblood of the organization. And over the years, we've had an enormous impact on Amazon and Amazon supply chain, the ability to support Amazon's growth and deliver really a vital service in the last year as COVID has taken over the country. Our ability to continue to leverage that technology and be able to deliver needed customer goods and services to our customers has been vital, I think, for the country. And that was exciting to see. I think just one more slide and more of a pitch here. One of the things we're doing is our main campus is up in North Reading, Massachusetts, and that's where Kiva was founded, and we've grown that campus quite a bit. But we've grown out of that campus, and as we were thinking about what to do, we were thinking about just moving the campus somewhere near North Reading, and we came up with another alternative solution, which is grow the equivalent campus we have in North Reading and put it in Westboro, Massachusetts. And it's going to have all the same capability we have in North Reading. So we have full service engineering services, a full engineering team, hardware, software, systems level QA. We also are building another manufacturing site. We'll have 2 manufacturing sites here, second one being in Westboro, and along with our service organization. So we're excited. It's under construction now. We have some people down there now. We're opening up in phases. But I will say one of the decisions of putting in Westboro was the proximity to WPI. It wasn't a driving decision, but was certainly in strong consideration. We've had such a great relationship with WPI. And for kids who are in the Worcester area who want to stay there, it gives us an opportunity to offer them great employment opportunities without having necessarily to go to Boston. And with the type of real estate we need, putting it in Boston would have been a challenging, just from a zoning perspective. The type of robotics we do would be hard to get facility like that. But so this will be opening within a year. And so we're super excited about our launch in the Westboro area and continuing to bring on great students from WPI. Thanks. I think it's up to you, Greg.
Sounds good. Well, thanks a lot. It's my pleasure to be here and to represent our faculty at this panel discussion. Can you get to the next slide, please? So I put together this stuff, some of what I felt were some of the keys to workforce training, and I might just advance through the list here since I don't have control of it. This is my list, not necessarily representative of everybody, but my impression here is this is really pretty representative of what we really value here at WPI. And one of them is making sure that we have really high impact problems, right? It's nice to be able to solve book problems in classes, but it's really important to actually address real issues, right? It's important to have a really diverse set of collaborators that we're working with, and these need to be really representative of the community and of the customers and of everybody that actually needs to be involved in finding the solutions to these kinds of problems. It's important to have state-of-the-art facilities, have state-of-the-art equipment, allow our students to be able to work in the kinds of environments that they're actually going to have in industry. I'm a little bit biased on this next one, but I think it's really important to have realistic testing environments as well. Because again, it's nice to have these kind of theoretical problems, but if we can't actually evaluate these in a real scenario, one, it makes it much harder to actually identify what the real problems are, because I think everybody that's worked on engineering problems knows that once you try to do this for real, all sorts of new issues crop up. And also, you really can't just effectively test systems unless you have these kinds of environments. So I'm going to talk about the practice point, which I believe is a really good example of this type of a scenario. And then, of course, the last one is having these really, really highly motivated, amazing students who are able to, really understand and see the big picture. And I think that's the most important part. I often tell students, the best students are the ones that are actually coming up with the problems. It's not say, just solve what's put in front of you, but really understand the big picture and how to solve these problems. So if we can advance to the next slide here. So I wanted to provide, what I think is a really good example of this, where we've actually developed the center. A lot of you are familiar with Practice Point. It's this idea of trying to put realistic point of care clinical settings, as well as manufacturing and test equipment right on the engineering campus. And the idea behind this is we can have medical imaging suites, patient care suites, home healthcare suites, motion capture capabilities, coupled with CNC manufacturing, laser cutting, electronics assembly, electronics test equipment, and whatnot. And by putting these together, one, it gives our students amazing experiences and capability to work in world-class environments. But also it encourages companies to come with us, and we're based on corporate partnerships. The companies can work closely with the students, work closely with the faculty on developing products in these types of environments. And it allows this really rapid iterative development where you can go, test something in an operating room, go across the hall, tweak the part and, change it, gain it on a electronics lab, or go to the machine shop and recut a part and then go back and tweak it. And it really enables this rapid development. The list on the right is all the things that are going on in the center and the different types of equipment. The fact that it's so small and hard to read on the slide just should be an example of the fact that there's so much that we have there. And I would really love to talk to anybody that's interested. And I'm looking forward to relaunching some open houses where we can bring in companies and where we can also bring in faculty and students and really try to identify how we can support our various different projects. Next slide, please. To give you an idea of the kinds of projects we're working on, to really set the stage that this is super high impact problems that we have, and also exciting technologies that our students want to get involved with. We're working on medical cyber physical systems, which is really any sort of smart healthcare device that uses sensing and feedback to do some sort of interaction with the patients or the environment. We're doing some really exciting work with medical robotics, and we've built up a very strong cohort of students and faculty and labs here at WPI in all sorts of different areas of medical imaging and image-guided interventions. We're talking about wearable devices, assistive devices, rehabilitative devices. And then also tied into all of this is how can we make these smart? How can we tie in data analytics? How can we make sure they're safe and secure and deal with interoperability aspects? So there's a lot of topics that need to be tied into this, and it's really important that our students understand all of these topics. You can't be developing any of these in isolation. So if we jump to the next slide here. So I don't want to go through this list in full, but the real goal behind this is it's so important that we build this ecosystem, and this ecosystem needs to include academia, industry, in our case, healthcare providers, whether it's the doctors and nurses, or the hospital administrators, or reimbursement, or legal, right? There's all these different aspects that need to be thought of and tied in together. how can we essentially develop products throughout the life cycle, and how can we build these relationships between our companies, our faculty, our student, and the entire community to, one, accelerate development of high impact products, but also to educate our students so they can really hit the ground running when they get into industry. And then the next slide, I have a whole bunch of pictures here. We might as well just advance through these. These are the kinds of things that we're exposing our students to. And again, we had our ribbon cutting just a little bit over a year ago, but then we all got kicked out essentially. So we're just starting to ramp things back up again here at Practice Point. But we have MR imaging capabilities. We have a fully functional operating room with X-ray and CT imaging capabilities. We have a patient care suite. We've brought in outside companies and tested out all sorts of different technologies. You can see we have a portable MRI in the bottom left there that a company brought to test out. We have a research version of a Da Vinci surgical robot. In the middle there, that was actually an MQP team that was on the rowing team trying to develop new devices in there in a motion capture lab, understanding their biomechanics, right? So there's also different products that we can develop. And in the top right was actually one of our earlier launch events where, in fact, Governor Baker was out here, and he was really excited to interact with, those are two of our graduate students in robotics engineering. So there's really amazing opportunities for our students. And then I have one last slide to wrap it up here. So again, I put a quick plug here. Anybody, this is whether you're alumni, students, faculty, or companies, we really want to engage folks in this environment. And also, presumably, we're going to start building out more of these. We now have the LEAP Center. There's the BETC from the biofab manufacturing side. There's manufacturing. There's materials. We have a lot of different groups on campus now. And I think it's really important to build up these core facilities, build our relationships with companies, and getting our students involved. And if you want to watch the video, I linked it in the bottom left there, but we put together a new video. If you just search for Practice Point, you can find that as well. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions when we get to that point.
All right. Thanks so much, Greg. And so I thought I would just share some statistics because when we look at the future of work, it's really important to understand that the future worker needs to be educated, and the future worker needs to be educated at many different levels. So first, it's important for us to understand that there is a technology, training, and educational gap. If we look at tech jobs in the US, there are currently 3 million tech jobs posted for high tech. There are only 80,000 four-year computer science degrees awarded nationally in the United States. So you can see there's a significant gap, and that gap only widens further with the advent of and introduction of new technology. And this is just for computer science. If we look at advanced manufacturing and we look at the data coming out of Deloitte and their manufacturing institute, over the next 10 years, the US is at risk of not being able to fill 2.4 million jobs, resulting in a negative impact of $2.5 trillion to the GDP. So that's just two sectors right there that we're looking at. And we see that there's some real opportunities, and there's a lot of market there, and there's a lot of great opportunities coming out of COVID to retrain and train America's workforce along these new technology needs. And when thinking specifically of coming out of COVID, a poll of Fortune 500 and Deloitte poll shows that of CEOs shows that hiring and diversity are the #1 and #2 concerns and attention points for CEOs coming out of COVID. Is maybe there were hiring freezes, maybe there was a shrinking workforce that was tolerated during COVID because of so many uncertainties, but now that things are beginning to become more certain, the economy is on the right track and companies are growing, CEOs are really looking to expand their workforce and develop that workforce and do it in a thoughtful, deliberate, and way with an attention on adding diversity to their workforce. And so as we look at Deloitte's Manufacturing Institute recommendations for advanced manufacturing and the future of what employers can do to better prepare their workforce and develop their workforce, I think that a lot of their points are applicable across industries. So you can see on that first point there, I've heard through conversations, I work with all sorts of different industries, but I've heard firsthand that the silver tsunami is either coming, or it's already come, or it's here for many different industries. So how do you tap into the extreme skill set of those experienced individuals and create trainings and transfer that knowledge, that tribal knowledge from those individuals to new individuals who are looking to fill their place and organically grow within a corporate environment? And one of the ways that companies are doing that, and thanks to technology they can do this, is to build up their own in-house trainings. So learning management systems, or LMSs, are increasingly popular for not only universities like WPI, but also for corporate partners, for companies that are looking to curate and build their own content library. And that's one of the areas that WPI has been able to help. We work in our Office of Academic and Corporate Engagement works in a consultative fashion to understand industry needs and to put together programming, asynchronous programming, to help our corporate partners with those needs. So a lot of our corporate partners may have contract workers, or they may have a big amount of hiring going on. And so they need to get knowledge and get learning opportunities in front of those new hires and those contract workers as soon as possible, whether it's for regulatory purposes or whether it's just to allow them to those employees to hit the ground running. And that's where WPI has been able to help those folks by building out some of their content, expanding on some of their content, as well as curating content through our own learning management system. Creating public and private partnerships, absolutely a way that WPI has made an impact over the last 10 years. Our Biomanufacturing Education and Training Center, here located on the WPI campus in the same building as Practice Point, was set up for the purpose of being able to train and retrain working professionals so that they could be plug and play ready within the life science ecosystem, a growing and very powerful ecosystem here in Massachusetts. So we regularly work with different Commonwealth and federal partners to take on and retrain individuals. And we see opportunities for this coming out of COVID, especially with the number of furloughs that have happened during the COVID era. We hope to continue to leverage those public and private partnerships and grant dollars. And then bolstering apprenticeship programs. So this is something that is relatively new for WPI. We've been focused on K through 12 education, high school partnerships, as well as community college partnerships, in addition to the good work that we're doing with undergraduate, graduate, and PhD students and producing future leaders through education on our campus. So this apprenticeship program is a more deliberate way for us to leverage the good work that our community partners like Worcester Technical High School are doing by providing opportunities for those students to come to WPI, to engage with our community of learners and faculty, and get exposure to our labs, as well as the labs of our corporate partners and the equipment of our corporate partners, so that those students are plug and play ready and they have many options in front of them. They could go directly into the workforce, they could go to a community college, or they could come to a university like WPI. So how do we take our resources and leverage those, as well as our existing corporate partnerships and community partners, and provide outside of the box opportunities to plug in new individuals at many different levels within the workforce development ecosystem. So with that, those are just some statistics and information I'd like to share, and I'll welcome questions as we get to that portion of the dialogue today. Thanks so much.
Hi, good morning. Tricia Sumilla from Worcester Technical High School, and thank you for allowing me to be here this morning to speak with our good friends at WPI. It's been a long and wonderful history between Worcester Boys Trade, now Worcester Technical High School, and Worcester and WPI. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the vocational technical education role, or the high school role and the worker in the workforce really starts with a core foundation of preparing students both academically and technically for a workforce, career, or college. And Worcester Technical High School is an innovation school, which means we have some autonomy within the Worcester district to devise curriculum, strategic planning, community projects around things that will really work for our students. We support and foster a culture of innovation, creativity, inquiry that builds for us resilience and solutions. And so we really work the line of STEM and STEAM, meaning we add the arts for the creativity, because to take STEM and have inquiry and that creativity around that truly is artistic. And so we try to balance both of those areas, all those areas for our students. So as Dean said earlier in his keynote about ditch digging and entry level and the evolution of that, we really work to develop entry level industry skills, what we consider hard skills. We call them entry level industry skills for our students, allowing them entry level into an industry. But we have a clear vision of also being aware of industry pathway levers. So not only are we helping to support students in industry level and entry level skills, but we want them to be aware of that there are other pathways within that industry to move to throughout their career. That while they might enter in one area, they may then develop and find a career and time in another area. We also work very hard in developing life skills for our students, emotional intelligence, interacting with people, being a team player, collaborating. Those are huge skills that we need to have students work on often. So that is another key support here. Financial literacy is a area of focus, social emotional care, especially in this time of COVID, which I'll speak to in a moment, how that has really impacted our students this year. In advancing equity, our students need to see people in the workplace and in the workforce that look like them. They need to be involved in a workforce. They need to see people doing a job that they then envision themselves to do. So advancing equity and diversity are things that are also keys for us here at Worcester Technical High School. So some of the many things we look to provide our students is an established industry credential. So we have approximately 1,500 students and 200 staff. The majority of our staff are instructors. We have support staff and obviously administrators. We also have a general advisory board of over 300 industry experts, industry partners, and also retirees. So that experience of someone who's been through the industry and can look back and give kind of their reflection of their life in an industry and the evolution of industries is really important. So those are all the kinds of people that make up our general advisory board that then help each of our programs develop curriculum, be sure that we're looking at the state-of-the-art equipment in all of our programs, and that we are looking to the future of where we see the worker and the new technologies and what we have to do as a public high school in order to be able to get those new technologies into our students' hands. So credential-wise, we always try and find an established industry credential for our students, whether it be a certified nursing assistant or an approved veterinary assistant, an OSHA credential, something that the student can walk out with and say, I have been exposed to something that is really important in the industry, and here's what I do know and have been assessed on at this time. Our class of 2021 our students have already earned over 397 credentials. And again, I just want to state that a big part of our mission is to introduce workforce and industry pathways. So one thing a student can figure out while in high school is something they don't want to do. That can be as impactful as realizing that this is my life's passion. I want to go into the medical industry, or I want to go into robotics, or I am passionate about IT and finding answers and solutions and being part of what's coming next, and helping the global society. However, it's also impactful for a student to say, this is not what I envision myself doing. And that really needs to be supported with our students. Our students have, we have interesting trends that we have seen over the past about 5 or 6 years that I've been director. Our highest areas of interest, just to share these with you, have been in our health science, biotech, early childhood, robotics and engineering, veterinary assisting, and our web development and our IT areas are all areas of very high interest for students. They are, there's often wait lists to get into those programs within the school, and areas that are continually growing, both in student numbers and needing more teachers in those areas. Our main mission is to prepare students to meet the challenges of a global society. And so while our students' community at the high school level is often very focused around the community of family, their program that they're in, their teachers, their friends, it is our mission to help them learn that the community then expands and that they're part of this global society. And so we work diligently on that, bringing students, bringing the world to students, both outside and within each of the programs. All of the instructors are subject matter experts that help students and have come from industry. So they bring that experience with them. Like I came from the veterinary industry and I brought my experience of that to my students. And I shared with them my experiences in that industry, what it was like for me, what I thought the future would look like for them, and was very authentic, and the challenges and of course the rewards within the industries. And that's what we look for from all of our instructors and our students. And I would say the future of technologies for our students, again, there has been a exponential evolution over this past year in learning. And so from students coming to school and being in the classroom and in the shops to trying to learn hands-on activity through the computer, we have had some amazing faculty that have worked through and come up with some amazing innovation ways to teach. We sent home many things for students to work at things at home while they're still on the computer. Just getting the technology of a computer in the hands of many of our students and getting the internet access was a huge part of our something we had to do this year. So they're all things that have kind of moved now the pendulum of learning for our students into this an area where I feel they have a real student voice in their learning, choosing, does this platform work for them or does it not? And I think that we will see moving forward students having a little more say in that, saying, you know what, this really worked for me and I want this to be part of my learning experience every day. This didn't work for me and here is what I really need. I need to be here. And they want to be connected, and how they connect, we need that to be their student, allow that student voice to be developed, and we need to hear that. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Regards from Paraguay. I'm so proud to be connected with WPI. And just to get a vision of where I'm at, I'm in a poor country in the middle of South America with a catastrophic situation with COVID. The World Health Organization dropped the ball with Paraguay and forgot to send us the vaccines. So there are no vaccines and there are no beds in the hospitals, and there's almost no solution in sight. So this is where we're working, but this is appropriate to see where our WPI students fit in. And for a few years now, I have been trying to expose our faculty and our students to social entrepreneurship, which is basically entrepreneurship, but identifying the opportunities in social and environmental problems that cause unnecessary suffering. Just like many engineers that come out of WPI can see commercial opportunities with their engineering skills, I am so proud and so amazed at how our WPI students are very familiar with social problems. The grand, so we can pass to the next slide. And so our students are familiar with the issues, right? And as we were talking with Dean Wole and the faculty at WPI, it's really not the future of work only, but the future of worker. And most of the workers in the world are very, very poor, but they still need technology and they still need to embrace the fourth industrial revolution. One of the issues that we share with WPI students is helping STEM to help people solve their problems. And so this is where perspective is rationality comes in. People in the field, as you know, need to be able to, for example, map their water systems. They need to understand how to do a simple projection to see how much water they will need. So we're lucky in Paraguay to have so many IQP groups working with us. We've had IQP students groups this year, 5 groups right now, actually, and last year the same. So these virtual IQPs have really helped us understand how much more talent we can attract to poor countries around the world using technology, right? And the key is to take advantage of WPI's soft skills. We always share with students, slow is fast and fast is slow. When a student arrives in a different country, they have to really understand how people think, what are their values, their culture, and how they can bond with these people before they can start working. And many times, some people are confused about this and they don't realize that what's important is for people to open up, accept you, and share their problems. And what happens many times with these projects is that people think they understand their problems, but as WPI students come in, they start reformulating the problem. So as was mentioned earlier today, it's not only about solving a problem, but understanding what the problem is. So it's complementing top-down approaches with bottom-up approaches. And I do want to mention one typical technical solution, one laptop per child, that was supposed to distribute $100 computers to every child in the world, and it failed, among other things, because it's not what people needed or thought they needed. And so we are proposing to the United Nations as well to rethink the Sustainable Development Goals, because come to think of it, these are problems for governments, but it is not problems for people. So instead of talking about financial inclusion, talk about my family saves. Instead of talking about food security, understand families being able to say, we eat nutritious food. So in conclusion, how can we leverage the Great Problems Seminar to advance WPI's idea of project-based learning in the first year? The contradiction in many poor countries is that we do use drones and robots for our winning industries. In the context of Paraguay, for example, we are top of the world with beef production, with hydroelectricity production, with soybean production, and with river barges and river transportation. But we do not know how to take those skills into housing, water, food, hunger, poverty. And it's the same thing as Dean Kamen said in his initial presentation. We need to create incentives to bring talent that works in one area to another area. Right now, we have a big crisis with COVID. We also have a big crisis with education. The education has shifted from teachers to mothers who are in their homes trying to show the homework that comes via WhatsApp and Facebook because there are no internet facilities. So in conclusion, how can we use technology to help the super moms of the world and the super teachers of the world to use technology because the teaching industry for elementary and high school is a huge employer, and we need to train those. But of course, there are other workers in the education system who are not employed or not paid, but do work in the education system, such as the super moms. So I'll leave it here and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for really interesting, informative, thoughtful comments to share with us. We'll begin. We have about 15, 16 minutes for some questions and some discussion. I encourage people in the audience, again, to put questions in the Q&A feature. And I'm going to start off with a question for Wes. And that's about, you talk about our connections to higher education. What advice would you give our students based on your long professional experience as they look to be the future workers?
I think you've got to come out of university or college with a real skill. I really believe that especially Worcester Tech offers a lot of really tangible skills, and get involved with your first job, doing something that's tangible. I mean, I go way back to my early days with Exxon. I cut my teeth in construction. I will never forget the 5 to 10 years I spent building things on the ground, learning how people did things physically, applying your engineering skills, of course, because I was a project engineer at the time, but really being out there, kicking the dirt around and seeing how things really get done in the real world, which is why I made the point about at UPS. 85% of the UPSers around the world, some 500,000 of them really don't have any choice. They've got to come to work, and they've got to do things, and they've got to handle things, and they've got to physically learn how to make things happen. The vaccines are manufactured in factories around the world by people that had to come to work. They had no choice. My best advice to my kids has always been, your first job is your most important one. It's your anchor job. I like the idea of working for a fairly large company where you can actually learn how to operate in an environment, an office environment, learn the bureaucracy of that, the politics, the human behaviors, the whole bell curve of life out there in big companies. I think an anchor job is an important job for your first one out of college.
Thank you. Joe, you've made a point of the connection with WPI, bringing in interns and hiring our students. Are there certain skills that you're looking for in particular when you're looking at WPI students?
You know, we just take for granted that they come up with great technical skill sets. So although we certainly evaluate that, the things we look for are people who believe in our mission and who are missionaries themselves and have passion for what we're trying to do, and are great collaborators and great teammates. And so we look for a lot of the soft skills. And are they good, are they great collaborators, teammates, believe in our mission? That's where we start. And do they have a focus on like customer obsession? Can they see what we're trying to achieve and their role in that? And are they all in with us? And so those are the things as we look at the talented kids coming out, and that tends to be a differentiator. And I think the WPI does an amazing job. I mean, year over year, we just take more and more WPI kids coming to our community, and they are. It's a super rare case if they're not wildly successful. So,
okay. Greg, you've described a really interesting and high-tech learning environment in your various labs. We're also trying to, of course, prepare students for workplace. I know you have partnerships with companies and industries. Can you explain to us how the partnerships help you to provide better training and appropriate training, relevant training for the students?
Yeah, absolutely. This really gets back to that point I mentioned of having, real problems to solve. It's nice to come up with synthetic problems in the lab. It's a great way to learn the technical skills. I think it's a given that we're going to graduate students with amazing technical skills, but it's really important also to understand how things work in industry. Kind of like what Wes was getting at. There's a lot of other factors when you work with industry, even when we're working with some of these big companies, the projects that they want to work on, they may change their mind from day to day, or their bosses or the company, pushing down decides I want to go this direction or that direction, or we have something that looks amazing and then the doctor comes in and trashes it and decides we have to completely change the design, right? So these are things that are really, really important that you need to get realistic experiences, or real experiences, actually, in this case, because these are actually products being developed, working in industry or working with, people outside of just your immediate group are super, super critical. And then doing it in this environment has really attracted companies. So we have a number of companies that are partners, and they range from everything from the smallest startups with 1 or 2 employees to, top, I don't know the number on it, but some of them massive, big name at medical device companies that we're working with as well. Right. So, you can get that experience. You can bring these real problems in. We have our students working directly with engineers. And in fact, a lot of these engineers happen to be people that graduated from WPI, and they're the ones that are put essentially as project managers for these WPI student projects, which is a great kind of, full life cycle, I guess, there. So, yeah, I think it's just a really good experience for them to work in, these realistic settings or real settings on real problems with real people in industry. And then it lets them hit the ground running when they actually get into the workforce.
Thanks. Dan, I want to follow up on this theme of company partnerships. That's what your job is about. I wonder if you could explain, we talk about this a lot at WPI, but there's obviously this need for retraining and constant training and new skill development and learning a new technology. So I'm wondering if you could explain sort of briefly what our capacity at WPI is to provide those services.
Absolutely. So since its founding, WPI has had its finger on the pulse of industry. We see it as a two-way street. We serve as a resource for our corporate partners, and we want to learn what their challenges are so that we can help to turn those challenges into tomorrow's opportunities. So really, it takes time and it takes trust to understand what those needs are. And in the process, we are very open as to what our talented faculty are working on, because what our faculty are working on is the technology of tomorrow from an academic standpoint. So that's where that two-way street comes in. We open the doors, we provide exposure to WPI faculty, WPI students in a research partnership. And then what our office does is really focuses on what are the needs above and beyond those research needs in terms of workforce development. And so that's where we try to understand what is a company's philosophy for building future organic talent, What is a company's philosophy for providing on-the-job training or just-in-time training in particular niche technical areas where WPI can assist? So my job is to ask good questions, take good notes, and then engage with our talented WPI faculty and leverage our resources in order to put together a portfolio of WPI-based educational solutions to get our corporate partners from point A to point B that aligns with their strategy and make sure that they maintain the cutting edge in industry.
Thanks. Patricia, a question for you. You've talked about the areas that the students are really interested in, and those seem like logical growth areas to me. You've also mentioned your advisory board and your industry partners. Wondering how we sort of balance or align what the students are interested in and what industry might need 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Excellent question. We often use aligning and strategic vision, working with the Central Mass Workforce Board and looking at the governor's regional workforce blueprint. Obviously, with the impact of COVID, there's re-looking at all those things. And then using our general advisory board, those subject matter experts, industry experts that are on those advisories, really helping us get the pulse of what's going on immediately on the ground in the community of Worcester. Our students are very focused within the city of Worcester. Transportation can be a barrier for them to many things, especially the workforce. So industries that understand and utilize public transportation for our students is very helpful. And then understanding transportation for our students when they're actually eligible to even drive. So we have government industry partners that help us align those. And then obviously our instructors help us align with what is needed in the industry, and then letting students see those opportunities that are coming and what they look like, and constantly communicating to them and being a part of it. Our school is a school that works. We have a working veterinary clinic that services the community. We have a restaurant. We have a bank. We have auto tech facility, advanced manufacturing that's making keys to the city and many of our community projects. We get our kids working in the building, servicing storefront to the community, and then we get our students out into the community working on many community projects so they can see their impact. So when they drive past a monument that they helped build or a bridge that they helped build with our collaboration with WPI, they can say, I was part of that, and share that with people. And all of the areas that work together to build some of these are kind of what helps students see their alignment to the workforce and where that can go. And again, just to emphasize, while we're building them for entry level, where that career path takes them may not be, where they end up. I love Wes's anchor job is agreed, really important. And I'm going to borrow that from you because that was an excellent point to say to students, like that is how you start to, develop yourself as an employee, a possible entrepreneur, and then move through your career. And students today really see themselves moving through their career rather than staying in one place and waiting for that to move. So thank you.
Thank you. Martine, WPI students. A lot of students are coming to WPI because they really see these opportunities in these technical careers, and they enjoy that kind of problem solving. But there are also obviously other sorts of problems. They might involve technology too, and their social and environmental and human problems. And this idea of being a social entrepreneurship, I think, is something that we really need to put in front of students. Can they make a living that way? You're still muted.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, just like Patricia just mentioned, that students do not expect to stay in one job for their whole life. Students today want a life with a purpose. So they need to fill their fridge and their soul at the same time. And yes, there are countless engineers who are changing the world and making enough money to send their kids to a good school throughout the world. You have a social scientist in Singapore who is Mr. Toilet. He devised a global system of sanitation that solves a sanitation problem, toilets in India and in Southeast Asia, while making an industry out of it. We have an engineer in Palo Alto who was a rocket scientist and now devised a way to enable the blind to access information. But he also used that technology to archive and store safely human rights documents from around the world. You have engineers in Peru organizing street vendors and people to collect trash and make a profit out of it. So yeah, there are many. In fact, that is the combination that we have a WPI with a global school and the School of Business, because as Patricia mentioned again, financial literacy is key. So the thing is, how do we make systems work together? The social system and the engineering system. Sometimes they don't talk, but the engineers are brilliant, but they just usually not exposed to problems in water distribution or in refuse and garbage collection. That's where the money is, and that's where the purpose in life is. So yeah, I can share with dozens and dozens of people who actually make a living, like me, for example.
Thank you, Martin. I have a question in the chat. I'm not quite sure. It might be more directed to Wes, but I'll let anyone who wants to weigh in. I think the question came in reference to the problem of some people working from home, other people working, needing to be physically at their jobs. And it asks, how do you navigate the different risk profiles of employees based on their regular tasks, so that in the COVID era, people are exposed to different kinds of risks based on where they're working, what they have to do. A question about whether those different risks create potential resentment across jobs.
I'll make a start at that. It's very good timing wise. Friday, I had at a town hall meeting with my headquarters over here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and most of the people that work in headquarters are Zoom workers. I mean, there are people that don't have to be at the office. And so except for the couple of drivers we have there, they come in every day, but everybody else has been remote, and they're getting too used to it, to be honest. And there's really no reason for them not to come to work anymore. And so in the speech I gave to the town hall group was that, 85% of UPS employees have to come to work. They have no choice. Laboratory workers, hospital workers, factory workers, they have to come to work. There's no choice. Policemen, law enforcement, military, they have no choice. So what's your excuse? Come on to work. I like human contact. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I'd like people to be together. I like people to solve problems together. And so I basically told them the culture is to be back at work. Please come back to work. If you have a real reason not to come to work, immune system, whatever issues, that's fine. But as a general rule, I think we're ready to get on with this.
Anyone else want to respond to that? I have one last question, I think, and a general open question. Listening to Wes again, I was really struck by the global supply chain issues, the complexity and the breadth of moving just, medical materials around. And obviously, Joe's interested in the big transit sort of issues as well, with a company that ships all of its products, essentially. No, we're not going to storefronts too much. I know Amazon's created a couple storefronts. A couple years ago, people might be saying, well, we're not as global as we used to be, or the economy isn't as global as it used to be, or we're pulling back with tariffs and other sort of trade barriers. And the COVID thing isolates everyone. And so we might really look at that. But the messages I'm getting are that globalization is really here, and we need to be prepared to work in a global workforce, and we need sort of the skills to be able to do that. And so I guess I'm asking, what's the role maybe for the global school in preparing workers for this globalized economy?
Kent, just
Go ahead.
the migrant crisis in the United States is a huge opportunity for us. We need to train our engineers. Where are the opportunities to create water systems or food systems in Honduras and in Guatemala? It's we're global. We are. It's sorry, we need to vaccinate everybody. We cannot just vaccinate one group of people and then say no, we are not going to. Those people are going to come to us. But that there are opportunities there,
Thank you. And thanks everyone. Really appreciated your participation. I'm sure those in the audience have found this to be an interesting conversation, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future. It's my opportunity also now to introduce Provost Wole Soboyejo for his sort of concluding comments for today's conference.
So for those that don't know me, I'm Wole Soboyejo. I'm the Provost here at WPI. Next. It's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to say a few words at the end of this session. And for me, I think this issue of the future of work and the future of the worker is really one of the most serious issues that confronts us at this stage as we adapt in this era of the fourth industrial revolution, where the knowledge is being created at a rate that is much faster that has ever occurred before. And for us, it's really wonderful to listen to our different speakers with their different perspectives. And so I'm really grateful to our speakers for bringing the richness that they have brought, as well as the organizers of this event. So I want to thank President Leshin for her vision of the Global School and this activity. I also want to thank Dean Kamen, our keynote speaker, who said a lot of things that really resonated with me as he presented his keynote, as well as all of our keynotes, our panel speakers that were moderated by Kent. I really thank all of you for the perspectives that you have provided. Yeah, and if I could sort of recap a few things that kind of resonated with me, I think basically, Dean said that life is not a spectator sport. You have to figure out something that you're passionate about and lead in many ways a life of purpose. And from my recollection from listening to Wes Wheeler, really the future of healthcare looks to be digital. And this is already here. We're living through it in the pandemic, and it's likely to continue. It creates massive opportunities to revolutionize how we provide healthcare to people across the world. And from Joe Quinn Levin, really looking at the story of Amazon, it just shows you this unprecedented velocity of innovation that is changing the world, where technology is being implemented at a rate that is rapid. And it offers then the opportunity, of course, to solve problems at a quicker pace, but it also creates the danger that we may create two worlds, those that keep up with this velocity and those that don't. And it was great to see Greg Fisher's perspective of WPI's advanced facilities in Practice Point and how we're leveraging robotics to solve some of the most important problems, bringing together an interdisciplinary team in a world-class facility here at WPI. And then it takes a village to raise a community. And it was so wonderful to listen to Pat Somalia of Worcester Tech, our sister organization here in Worcester, talk about the work that they are doing to really prepare work-ready individuals. And we're super excited about the collaboration that we have with Worcester Tech in what we hope will be the launch of the apprentice program, which will hopefully nurture the apprentices of tomorrow into the future of work and the future of workers, with lots of opportunities to serve different parts of the pyramid. And then I want to thank Martin Burt for providing really a global South perspective and a global perspective of a social entrepreneur who really sees things in a global context and sees the opportunities for WPI projects to have an even bigger impact when we really take these approaches that we have in problem solving and we work collaboratively with folks like Martin to solve these projects in our project teams. Next, please. And so as we look at this and the context of today's program, I really think that when one thinks about the future of work and the future of the worker, the key idea has to be purpose-driven. It is not just a life where electronics and digital electronics will make our lives easier. For really us to create a community that is really sustainable, we need to think about a purpose-driven future and how we articulate this to our youngest kids in school so that they grow up with this idea that they can transform the world. So knowledge for its own sake has limited value, but knowledge with a purpose can transform the world. And I think as we excite young people and as we think about growing our digital community of the future, we must really build this in, that we all need purpose. We're all social creatures that need purpose. And our goal here at WPI is to harness the kind of ideas and perspectives that we have presented here today as we begin to think about how we prepare WPI graduates and how we prepare people that work in our workforce development programs for the future of work and the future of the worker. And so I really want to express my appreciation for the ideas that were presented today. And I assure you that we will consider these ideas as we continue to develop our concepts for WPI's next strategic plan. Next. And then before we close, I just want to look back a bit at the last 9 months or so, at the tremendous progress that we have made in our virtual launch of the Global School. And the whole idea truly was to build community with our alumni, with our faculty and staff, our students and our partners, by looking at the different regions of the world and how the Global School can bring us together to create an educational platform that is a partnership for the establishment of what we think, what we hope will be truly a global polytechnic that is catalyzed by the Global School. So we had the virtual launch in October. And since then, we've had different foci in different regions of the world, from Africa to Latin America and the Caribbean, to the Middle East, to Oceania, Asia, Europe, and today's activity on the future of work and the future of the worker. It's really been a tremendous expose to the different regions of the world and what we WPI can do to bring our special sauce to really build in relationships that can have a transformational impact on the world and engage in our full community in this process. Next. And so what's the theme? It's identifying the most important local global challenges, working together as teams in demand-driven activities where we can really ultimately develop local and global solutions that have an impact on the lives of people and on the societies that we're hoping to impact. Next. And so this is an opportunity that enables us to bring together a rich array of leaders that have been part of this global launch. It's been great to welcome keynote speakers such as Robert Langer, who's known as the Edison of medicine, to talk about how project-based learning can really be used to build solutions to problems of global health. Other perspectives of the ambassador to the US from Ghana, Bafo Ajebawa, who talked about the needs of people in developing countries and the opportunities for WPI partnerships. Or Carlos Nobre, Nobel laureate 2008 for his work on climate change, who talked about the need for sustainable ecosystems and the opportunities for WPI to partner with his team in the Amazon in ways that could leverage us in strategic efforts to build the Amazon in a sustainable way. Or the perspectives of Malik Al-Kili from the Middle East, again, looking at the role of entrepreneurship in Middle Eastern futures. And then looking at places like Oceania, where the rights of indigenous people and the opportunities for leveraging STEM for their development create some interesting synergies. It was great to have Meliwent and our own Holger Dressler kind of define what WPI could do in Oceania that spans the full regime from Fiji, Papua New Guinea, all the way to Hawaii. And in this era of COVID, really, it was a delight to welcome Meng Bo from Tsinghua University, who really talked about how Tsinghua has been very strategic in building strategic international partnerships with other universities across the world, including WPI, in ways that enable it to have its strategic goals and in ways that enable our Center for Global Public Safety to be one of their key projects. And then Mark Leonard presented a vision of Europe in the Biden era. And this is a very important example of how what we do in the global school can connect to policymaking and building relationships that matter. And finally, today, the presentation by Dean Kamen that really showed the great value of the WPI approach, our project-based approaches, our connections to global in ways that connect to first, in ways that inspire young people and all people to pursue STEM when they pursue lives of purpose. And what we want to do going forward is to bring many of these folks together to work with us, WPI as a community, as we build our global school in the months and years ahead. Next, please. And so as we look forward to the future, we're really looking to build on this program established over the last 9 months or so. And we're looking to build by exploring global local themes in the different regions of the world and really connecting these efforts to global grand challenges in energy, environment, water, food, social justice, and global public safety. And we're also looking to celebrate, hopefully, as we build a global school, the impact of the global school in transforming knowledge to impact. And I'm particularly excited as we look to bring in a new dean for the global school to see what new rich ideas the new dean will bring to really build with our stakeholders the future of the global school. Next, please. So before we close, I want to thank all those that have really worked so hard to make this program a success. Rachel Roy, our program coordinator extraordinaire, who has really managed all the logistics in ways that have made all this possible. I want to thank Kent Rissmiller and Chris Wolbe for their advice and all the global school team for their support of this vision, which is now gradually becoming real. I want to thank Donna Stock and Karen Bean of Advancement for working hard behind the scenes to really help raise the funds to make the global school activities real. I want to thank Maureen Diana and the marketing team for really working with us in communicating the ideas to all of our stakeholders. And I want to thank the Global School Implementation Committee that has worked so hard to really develop the vision for the implementation of the global school. And then the session organizers over the last 9 months, Rob Kruger, John Galante, Athi Madan, Joe Durayan, Karen Bean, Mike Elms, Ingrid Shockey, Jennifer Rudolph, Peter Hansen, Jean King, and Kent Rissmiller. You've been wonderful. I want to thank the WPI community, faculty governance in particular, for helping so hard to establish the global school. And really all that have made this vision really come to this point where we as a WPI community look forward to the global school as the vehicle with which we hope to transform lives by translating knowledge into impact across the world. Thank you very much. Okay, and with that, we conclude this session of the program.